So, the former UK Prime Minister, Tony Blair, has kind of laid into current Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. So, this is on the BBC here. It's a bit of a roundup of today's news headlines. So, the Daily Telegraph, Blair, Starmer has no plan for Britain. The Times, lurch to the left, puts Britain at risk, Blair tells Labour. And the Daily Mail, now Blair savages Labour's lurch to the left. I thought I would go to the original source and have a look at what Tony Blair is saying. So, this is the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, which I guess is Lucifer's branch office on planet Earth. So, Tony Blair's vehicle for whatever it is he does these days. So the title is The Labour Party is playing with fire over its future and the future of the country. And this is attributed to the man himself and dated yesterday, 26th of May, 2026. This is quite long. It's about 5,000 or 6,000 words. So I'll read kind of selected parts of it. The Labour Party is playing with fire, or more accurately, with its future and that of the country. Yes, I mean, I've seen talk online. Is this the last Labour government? Will there be more than a dozen Labour MPs? That might be a little bit hyperbolic, but we did see a massive collapse in the Conservative vote in the last general election in 2024. I think we can reasonably expect a similar drop in the Labour vote at the next general election. I led the Labour Party, so I, Tony Blair, led the Labour Party for 13 years and through 3 general elections. So 3 general elections that he won. And the thing about the Labour Party is they don't really enjoy winning general elections. They don't really enjoy being in government and having to make the hard decisions of government. So Tony Blair is unusual in that he was able to win all these elections. It is a party largely of decent, well-meaning people who want the best for the country. I mean, perhaps they're well-meaning, decent. I mean, it's difficult to say considering some of the lunatic ideas that you see people come out with. Its mission is, as its 1994 rewritten constitution says, to ensure that power, wealth, and opportunity are in the hands of the many and not the few, and it's a perfectly noble one. But I'm afraid, like many progressive parties, it has an almost infinite capacity for self-delusion. I agree absolutely 100%. In terms of foreign policy, I think Tony Blair is... I mean, clearly what he did in Iraq was not a good thing. In terms of foreign policy, he's pretty much seems to be driven by ego. In terms of domestic politics, I think Tony Blair has excellent instincts. I think he has a much better understanding of what people in the UK are like and what people in the UK think and want than most other domestic politicians. So I think he has great instincts for domestic politics. Foreign politics is a completely different thing. But in terms of domestic politics, I think Tony Blair's always shown that he has good instincts. And yes, progressive parties are absolutely full of self-delusion. They hate actually living in reality. Let's carry on. So it, the Labour Party, won the 2024 election not by acclaim, but by being an acceptable default option to a Conservative government the country felt had behaved unacceptably. Yes. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the vote numbers for the 2019 general election and the 2024 election, it's clear that the Conservatives lost like 45% of their vote. And then Labour actually got fewer votes in 2024 than they did in 2019. So it's not an endorsement of Keir Starmer as such. It's a quirk of the system that Keir Starmer has ended up with such a large majority. It's about the failure of the Conservatives. So an acceptable default option, I think that is a good description of what happened. However, partly because of the intellectual wasteland of the intellectual wasteland of the Corbyn years. Um, I mean, I like that he's telling it how he thinks. I think that's a fair description of Corbyn and the people who followed him. It had no properly thought through analysis of how the world was changing and what that meant for policy. Yeah, they were just, we're not the Tories, vote for us, that's it. Okay, this bit I disagree with. Wes Streeting is a huge political talent. I think the best description of Wes Streeting that I've seen. Wes Streeting, the health secretary who resigned maybe last week. Wes Streeting is the Michael Gove of this government. He's there, and nobody likes him. He's a complete sort of Billy No Mates. I don't think there's no way he's going to be prime minister. I mean, are Labour MPs stupid enough to make Wes Streeting prime minister? I don't think even Labour MPs are that stupid. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think even Labour MPs are stupid enough to put Wes Streeting into Downing Street as prime minister. Andy Burnham was an outstanding member of my government. No, he wasn't. He's a C-lister at best. He's a Blairite if it suits him. He's a Brownite if it suits him. He's a Corbynite if it suits him. He was C-list. He left Westminster to be mayor of Manchester because nobody particularly liked him. And the only reason that people are talking about Andy Burnham as prime minister is because he's not in Westminster right now and isn't associated with the incompetence. And he's been lucky enough as mayor of Manchester that he can just get money from central government to do what he wants. I don't think he's made decisions as such. I don't think he's had to make difficult decisions particularly. This leadership debate has an extraordinarily retro 20th century feel to it. Like most politicians, they're anxious to distance themselves from the Westminster bubble. But Britain's problem isn't a Westminster bubble, it's a politics bubble. This is interesting, this part, I think, that he acknowledges this. The politics of the future may be better understood by those presently outside politics. The world is turning on its axis. Today's politicians, living in a 24/7 pressure cooker, have barely time to recognise the turning, let alone study it. These changes need long-term strategic thinking, which is alien to the way most modern democracies function. Yeah, I mean, I think that's very insightful. You're constantly dealing there. The politicians are constantly dealing with the news cycle, having to respond to things, and they don't have time to sort of sit back and just watch what's going on in a longer term sense. The government's principal problem isn't Keir's personality or a failure to communicate our achievement, or a need to assert more strongly Labour's values. It's because we don't have a worked out, coherent plan for the country in a fast changing world and are in the wrong political position from which we can devise one and win a second term. Yeah, exactly. We're living on the fumes of the Thatcherite settlement, which is in itself the fumes of the post Second World War settlement. The government is governing from an essentially traditional Labour soft left position, parked firmly in the party's comfort zone. Very much. It's tax and spend, tax and spend. Everything you hear from the government, it's about, can we tax this thing? Can we tax this thing more? Can we spend more money on this thing? It's kind of classically soft left. It's kind of perhaps what it would be like if Neil Kinnock or John Smith had ended up becoming the Prime Minister. Whether there is a leadership change or not is irrelevant if it doesn't start with a policy debate. Are we really prioritising economic growth? Essential not just for prosperity but for social justice. If there is a slew of policies we're implementing which might restrict it, then yeah, absolutely, restricting economic growth. I think that's something that critics of the government, the Conservatives, Reform, Restore, restricting economic growth is things that they say over and over. So it's interesting that Tony Blair shares that idea. Does our economy need right now the goal of clean energy or cheap energy? Again, a very common criticism of Keir Starmer's government. How do we justify adding to the welfare bill when it's already ballooning? Taxes are high and getting higher, and we're told we have to increase defence spending to prepare the possibility of war. Again, I think Tony Blair has very good instincts for domestic policies. He clearly shares a lot of conservative, a lot of reform criticisms of the current government. He agrees that these things are actual problems. And is it right that we're living through the 21st century equivalent of the 19th century industrial revolution? And if so, are we remotely meeting the scale of that challenge? I guess here he's talking about AI. So he's talking about the fact that we've seen the blue collar working class manual jobs go in the 80s, and now we're starting to see the white collar office jobs go in the same way. And how are we going to deal with that? Nobody really knows. Trying to force the Prime Minister out before we know what policy direction we're bringing in is not a serious way of conducting ourselves. Wow, not a serious way of conducting ourselves. That's quite sort of a harsh criticism, I think. And so far, though of course these are very early days, we have a fight between a modernising wing of the Labour Party appearing to advocate rejoining the EU and the alternative, which thinks the answer is moving even further left on taxes, spending on welfare, spun with a rehash of the far left critique about nothing good coming out of the last 40 years of neoliberalism, which presumably includes the last Labour government. Yeah, so the Labour Party has seen the success that Tony Blair has given it and decided that they don't like success. They basically want to go back to the 1980s. So the modernising wing, and then the alternative, which wants to go further left as well. So, yeah, I mean, Labour, extremely regressive, basically fighting 20th century wars. It is one thing when in opposition to indulge this personal delusion that when we lose seats to the right, the country is really signalling it wants Labour to move left. It's dangerous to do so in government. Yeah, so there was this critique in the 1980s where the far left of Labour would say, the working class, they're voting for Thatcher because we're not left-wing enough. We should go further left, and then they'll stop voting for Margaret Thatcher and the Tories. Basically, exactly the same delusion that they've always had, just absolutely no political instinct. So the political instinct that Tony Blair brought to the Labour Party and gave them 3 general election victories, and they hate him for it, for whatever reason. I mean, there are definitely good reasons, but it is like the far left in Labour don't actually want to win. They just want to make themselves look good and feel good. Okay, skipping forward a bit. Unfortunately, to the exam question, how do we win a second full term of government? The one answer, which seems ruled out, is learning. Is learning from the only time in the party's 120-year history it has ever done so. So Tony Blair managed to win a second full term of government. I think Harold Wilson in the 60s, he did maybe 18 months or so in his first term and then won a second term, which he did 4 years of. So, but like in terms of electoral success and the Labour Party, you're mostly just looking at Tony Blair. So in that sense, he's kind of earned the right to brag a little bit, I guess. Governments which succeed don't start with a personality contest. Yeah, and the Labour leadership party, it is just a personality contest. Is it going to be boring Keir? Is it going to be Big Ange? Is it going to be Andy who turns on a dime, whatever the political wind is doing? So governments which succeed don't start with a personality contest or a political question. They start with an idea, a project, a governing purpose, an analysis of what is wrong, and a plan to put it right. I think he's suggesting here we can't tinker around the edges. We can't change small things here and there anymore. We need to look at the problem, and we need to rip things up and start again in the way that Thatcher did and in the way that Blair did. The challenge of democracy is not transparency, honesty, or conspiracy theories. It is the efficacy, is the ability to get big things done, to have leaders who are not problem managers but problem solvers. Wow, this is quite strong language, I think, for I mean, if you think of the average sort of Blairite politician, they're quite, I mean, obviously they're quite political, but this is kind of quite blunt language from the guy who started it all. So I think I'll jump forward a bit. Both main parties have gone off the rails by putting internal politics first and good policy second. Labour moving to the left after 2007, culminating in the absurdity, cool absurdity of the Corbyn leadership. The Tories with Brexit, yeah. So the Labour tearing themselves apart, which we see right now because they're in government. The Tories, I mean, tearing themselves apart over Europe since the late 80s, which culminated in Brexit. Neither has fully recovered, and ironically, their failures have spawned new parties to their further left and right. I think he's got very good instincts. I think he understands the situation very well. Okay, so I'm going to skip forward through a lot of the foreign policy stuff. There is a fundamental problem. The people don't want politics as usual. The real reason behind the rise of leaders from Donald Trump to Giorgia Meloni to Javier Milei is that they answer this call. You can like them or dislike them, but their chief characteristic is they appear to be unbound, not unconstrained by conventional thinking. And Keir Starmer is absolutely conventional thinking. That's all he ever does within the rules, within the processes. So conventional politicians pay close attention to what media, traditional and social, agitate over. This means they're blown this way and that, trying to follow the prevailing wind. The paradox is the public form part of this wind, but at the same time deeply distrust it and look for leaders who stand strong in the face of it. These unconventional leaders, so Trump, Milei, etc., appear to have the ballast many conventional politicians lack. This feels like an attack on Starmer, and hopefully it is. They're prepared to raise the middle finger to the part of the media which opposes them, and for protection they build a tribe, a core of support which will follow them, sometimes almost blindly. That's why the scandals, which would immediately topple a conventional politician, they survive. The tribe won't follow the tornado, therefore they reduce its impact. To switch analogies, they defang the beast. And these leaders have a project. You might like it or not, but they have one. It gives them strength and purpose. Before the 2024 general election, I would ask members of the shadow cabinet and parliamentary party how they saw themselves. What are we? New Labour, Old Labour, Blue Labour? Usually the response would be, we don't really think of ourselves like that, i.e., we don't want to make that choice. Yeah, that is a rubbish response. We don't really think of ourselves like that. That's an extremely negative way to answer the question. You will drift, trying to be both new and old Labour at the same time, and will end up as what I call just Labour, firmly in the party's comfort zone. Yes, absolutely. So these are the backbench MPs. They live very much in their comfort zone where they can have whatever they want. They can have all the welfare benefits for people. They can increase spending as much as they want. They can increase taxes as much as they want. They live in the comfort zone. That's worse. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. But I think Tony Blair makes a very good diagnosis of the problem. Like I say, foreign policy, I think he was a complete disaster. Domestic politics, I think he has great instincts, and I think he's done a great analysis of Keir Starmer's government and the problem for the left in Britain in general. Thanks for watching.